1, 2. It'll be about 30 seconds probably. Just making sure that if the microphone's on, the Barry Hearn press conference, live from the World Champs press room, coming up very soon. Nothing coming through yet, Lewis? No. Should be coming through. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Barry.
Did we have a glass? Are we like waiting? Yeah, I'd like one now because I'm going to be happy in a few minutes. Yeah, I'm all over. Good morning, everybody. Or afternoon, shall we say? Morning, Hector. Are you well?
Very well.
Good. We've seen some great snooker, everybody. I'm really pleased. Now you do get a glass afterwards, but chairman's privilege, I'll get one first, all right? Because that's going to go down. Thank you for all your hard work, right? When we finished this announcement and any questions, you will all get a copy of this so that you know you have got some reasonable excuses for not misquoting me, all right? So, thank you for joining us on our first Champagne Moment press announcement, which we do every year, but this year's probably more significant than most because we look back on 5 years of ownership and judge our success or failure, and then obviously begin to plan the next 5 years because complacency is a killer and we're not going to fall into that trap. So to give you just a very brief, the last 5 years for me personally have been 5 of the most motivating years I've had involved in any sport. It was really exciting 5 years ago by the narrowest of margins to get the gig, the job of control of World Snooker and its commercial rights forever and ever, providing I hit certain targets. In June 2010, the prize money was £3.5 million. This year, we hit just over £8 million. And I'm pleased to say to all the players and look them in the face and say that the prize money paid out during my first 5 years is a little over £12 million more than we guaranteed the players at the time of takeover. So we tick boxes, we deliver what it says on the tin. So that's the last 5 years, and you know, we haven't got everything dead right, of course. We made some mistakes. I think, as I said, it was Anaya and Bevan said, if you haven't made 7 mistakes by lunchtime, you're still in bed. We made a lot of decisions. We made a lot of changes. Movements to the 128 flat draw in most events, creation of opportunity for kids, the idea that it doesn't matter who you are, what your reputation is, it counts for nothing, it's all about the field of play. We created a brutal environment, and it is brutal, and it has to be brutal to be taken seriously by broadcasters and sponsors and fans around the world. This is not a boys' club, this is a proper global sport. So now we look at the next 5 years, and today we're going to announce a few things that are quite significant. And we're looking at not just next season, but the season after and the season after that initially. We're not setting any silly targets because we may surpass even silly targets. And I'm not going to be limited by anything other than my own imagination. All events other than the World Championships will be a flat 128 draw when existing contracts expire. As you know, we have 2 events, Shanghai Masters and the Australian event, that are still subject to contract. The World Championships will be completely unchanged with regard to format, seedings and qualifying competitions. One of the best things I've seen in snooker is the qualifying competition for this year's event. What we have done is created effectively another television contract, television event, because the drama that came out. Congratulations to the players, it was absolutely brilliant. The prize money for the World Championship for the 2017-18 season at the latest will rise to £2 million with £500,000 going to the winner. The Pro Tour prize money in season 2015-16 will rise to 8.5 and for 2016-17 will hit the magical £10 million. During 2016-17, obviously it takes a lot of organising, we will launch a new series called the Home Series. We won't forget our fans in the UK, and we will be launching to run alongside the Welsh Open, the Scottish Open from Glasgow, the Irish Open from Belfast, and the English Open from Manchester. These will all be major ranking events available on the 128 flat format. We will also put up a little special prize just for someone who's got ambition. Any player wins those 4 events, there will be a £1 million bonus. In addition to these new ranking events, we will also in 2016 create the European Open, as we will be doing less of the smaller European Tour events and concentrating on bigger ranking events. The European Open will be an event that will move throughout Europe, as its name suggests. The World Grand Prix, which we started this year with our friends at ITV, will be a ranking event from the 2015-16 season with the top 32 players from a prize money list beginning at the commencement of the season. So any kid that gets his Pro Tour card is in with no catch-up time, straight out level playing field. The Players' Championships will have the same format for 2015-16 because it comes from the European Tour, which will stay as previous for this year. But in 2016-17, to follow the FedEx style event from golf, the Players' Championship will follow the World Grand Prix with the top 16 players invited from total prize money won, obviously including the World Grand Prix. and that's on a 1-year list. Over the next 5 years, working alongside Jason Ferguson and WPBSA, we will be expanding Q schools to take into account a Q school in Asia, the Americas, Africa, Australasia and Europe. We don't want there to be any barriers to anyone taking up this wonderful sport, and therefore we will be taking the Q school format with alternating numbers of spots depending on entries to those 5 continents. And finally, negotiations will begin very shortly with both the Sheffield City Council and the BBC with a view to extending current arrangements. There will always be players that will criticise dependent on how it affects them as individuals. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. That is human nature. My job is, however, to look at the growth and the development of the sport. And sometimes there will be some casualties. So, for example, a player seeded number 17 is so unlucky that he's not in the top 16 for the World Championship cut-off. He's got 3 rounds of qualifying. It's brutal. But you know what? When your football team gets beat on goal difference, that's brutal as well. When a golfer misses a 6-foot putt on the 18th and therefore doesn't make the cut, it's brutal. But rules are rules. We have to have a level playing field, and the World Championships will be the only tournament where the top 16 receive a reward of entry into the latter stages because they've earned it. The caveat being, of course, if they lose in the first round, their prize money will not count towards their rankings, and that will have a dramatic effect. You're going to see a lot more movement in the world rankings on the prize money list, especially with the additional prizes, with the additional prize money on offer. My main concern here is not for the established stars. They are old enough, ugly enough to look after themselves. My concern is the new kid that comes into Q School and wins a tour card. The excitement of someone with ability having an opportunity to change their life is paramount to what we're trying to achieve. Wherever they come from, whether, and as you know, we're a total open sport, whether they're male or female, whether they're black or white, whether they're left-handed or right-handed, it doesn't matter. This sport is about ability. I don't want any barriers, artificial barriers, to be set up to defeat the object of giving that kid the benefit of his Willy Wonka golden ticket. That tour card is so hard to earn. Record numbers again in Q School this year, like nearly 180 players going for 8 spots. It's brutal. But today's world of commercial exploitation means if a sport is not brutal, it's not taken seriously. We are now being taken seriously by sponsors and broadcasters across the world. And this statement today is a quantum leap of where we are, from where we are, and it's only just the beginning. We are miles away from peaking. If we've come from base camp, we're not even halfway up the mountain. So thanks to the press and the media that have done such a great job for us selling our sport to your readers around the world, and thanks to our television partners who've done such a great job, but most of all, thanks to the players, because the standard we're seeing, the number of century breaks we're seeing, the drama we're creating is what's going to propel this sport further and further towards what one day I hope will challenge golf on the global circuit. That's more than enough for me. Any questions?
Barry, you've got events such as the China Open where you take 64 players out to the venue and have one qualifying round in the UK. Do you think that's the right balance, or do you think it should be more or less?
I think it's, from a practical logistics point of view, 64 is probably the maximum. We're changing it next year to say that the world champion and the world number 1 and the top 2 highest local players from that country, their matches will be held over as we try to ensure that we're delivering the best possible product. That's a halfway house. Realistically, a lot of people criticise wildcards in these events without understanding that those wildcards have generally come from local qualifiers that have stimulated growth in that country. And you know, we brought in sensible rules that, you know, the bottom seeded players that have to play a wildcard, they'll only have to play 1 wildcard a year. So, you know, it's a price to pay. But the bigger picture, well, I keep saying I had a few minutes with John Parrott, who's always good to talk to, you know, and we disagree on a lot of things. You know, and I always say to him, John, you know, you're talking as a snooker player. You're talking as someone who has played the game. There is a much bigger picture in this world today. The world of new media, the world of digital television, the opportunities that exist that we haven't even begun to scratch. And we have ownership. So we're not working for anyone else. And that's the fun of it. That's the fun of, this is the game I play. I'm not very good at snooker. I'm not bad at this.
You said last night you hope that you could maybe attract some blue chip sponsors to
Yep.
support banks, insurance
Yep.
companies, etc. Are you making any headway with that?
I'd like to tell you I was, but that probably wouldn't be the truth. We are in an age where we are very attractive to gaming companies, and they are paying terrific money for the job we're doing for them, and you know, Betfred and all the other gaming companies are there, and I hope very much that we have other sponsors knocking on the door for these new events. We pitch to everybody, and at the end of the day we run a commercial operation, and we have to go where the money is because the players want to see more prize money, and Bluebell Wood, our charity, wants to see more money. So, you know, I'm getting excited because Fred's in for 25 grand bonus once we hit 70 centuries, and it looks like a certainty. I've never said I've got a certainty against a bookmaker before, so it's a big day for me. But it's, in our world, we live in the real world. We take and we do the best deals we can for where we want our sport to go. I would love to see Hong Kong Shanghai Bank coming up with a fraction of the money they, for example, paid into, say, the World Match Play Golf, which they virtually did for 30 of their customers. Scary. It's all about perception. Where do you perceive a sport to be? What is the demographic? We tick a lot of demographics for gaming companies, which is why we're much in demand. And we have to live in that world. One day, that demographic may change, their attitude may change, or other sponsors may come in and rival them for sponsorship. It's great to be living in a competitive environment. My job is to make sure that the product is appealing to as many people as possible, and then the deal is a lot easier to do.
Is that perception still a problem for the sport then?
I think perception is a problem for a lot of what I call blue collar sports, although snooker maybe is not so blue collar anymore. It evolves, you know, and like the sport of darts is another great example, you know, where they get huge numbers, same as snooker, and the perception is still, we live in a little bit of a snobbish world, don't we? You know, oh, it's a snooker player, you know, a darts player. They don't talk like that about golfers. And yet the viewing figures for golf are a fraction of what we deliver. So there's an education there we have to do, and it's not going to come overnight. I think we've changed in the perception of snooker. I think it is becoming classless as a sport, which is commendable. And I think as that perception changes, so our market may change. At this moment in time, we don't have an event without a sponsor. So that's a very, very good starting point.
Barry, when you're pitching to the non-gaming companies, is there a pattern to the reasons they give as to why they're not getting on board?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very difficult talking to a lot of the financial institutions following the banking crisis. They start off by not wanting their name up there. They'd rather, you know, bankers are sort of held in slightly lesser regard than paedophiles. You know, commercially, you know, banker, you know, no one actually admits to being a banker because it's like, you know, it has all these connotations of abusing all the wealth of the country. So that they're actually, they need a job done on them actually to restore their public image. At the moment, they're keeping it off the radar. And these have been very austere, difficult times in industry the last 5 years. I mean, to take the prize money from 3.5 to 8 and still make a profit has been an achievement because of the problems and the difficulties that exist in the economic situation of the world, not just the UK. So I think the most important thing is the sport came off the radar. Less and less people outside of the gambling guys that know it works for them were looking at snooker. It's almost like, oh yeah, didn't they used to play? Does Reardon still play? Does Higgins still play? You know, that is seriously the conversation outside of the closed confines of snooker interested parties like you. So it's an education thing about saying, look, have you looked at the numbers? And when they look at them, you can feel the perception changing. And I believe over a period of time it will. I mean, it's easy to say if you look at China, you've got the China Bank doing the China, you've got Shanghai Bank doing the Shanghai Masters. In that sector, the perception is different. And we've got to educate our sectors to feel the same way too. It all comes down to numbers. It's a numbers game. If you can keep knocking away and saying, we're producing the goods, we're delivering the ratings, then more and more people will show an interest in you. But also, it has to be entertaining. And, the old argument about the personalities and all that. And I think we're getting to the area where we are beginning to develop more personalities that will not recreate the glory days of the 80s, but certainly be a standout and recognisable character. And that we need some of those. We've seen one in young McGill this week, who's gone from zero to hero, really, in terms of public awareness in a week, which is great. And we need more of that.
And just one thought, you mentioned Shanghai there. So when it'd be 1, 2, 8 when those...
Yeah, Shanghai, Australia's got 1 year to go, Shanghai's got 2.
Okay, thank you.
There's a lot of media attention on this at the moment. Any plans for the ladies' game? Any changes?
I don't have a ladies. I have an open sport. I don't have a ladies game. I don't. I mean, without being, I'm not being critical of it. I'm just saying that it's always very difficult in today's PC-friendly world when, if you have a ladies' game, the next thing you guys will be saying is, why isn't the prize money the same as the men? So like, oh, well, actually, I tried that 15 years ago. It was a disaster. So what I prefer is based on ability, and there's no argument then, Sport has to be competitive to be attractive to viewers, customers, sponsors, and therefore we have a system in place called Q-School, which tells you if you're competitive. And if you're not competitive, then, you can't play. So I think the ladies' champion, whoever she is, from year to year, deserves a wild card into the World Championships as a, if you like, a gesture. But really, I can't take away one spot in an open sport from a young kid by giving a spot to someone who hasn't earned it.
Leanne Evans said not enough is being done to close the gender divide. Do you agree with that?
I think if I was involved in the women's game, which I'm clearly not because my brief is World Snooker, they have their own association, I think. So that's really where the problem has to be solved, by their own association. There's no one going to come out of the woodwork and save something with, how many entries were in the World Championships this year? 22, 23? No? Somewhere in that number. 15 years ago there was 120, I think, the last time I did the Women's World Championships, and it didn't work then. So, for me to try and make a case for that opens the door for lots of other specialist cases, and the precedent would kill you. I think the women's, if they're really serious, it needs someone, it needs a Barbara Hearn to come along and say, I'm going to do a job with the Women's World Championships, because they have to grow themselves. To prove their worth, they have to be commercially viable. And that's a job for someone that would have more credence if they did that. But you can't just look for handouts. It's not, sport doesn't work like that in open sport. So with us, there are no barriers to entry whatsoever, and the only condition is ability. And I think Leanne Evans, by the way, I think she's a top quality player, a top quality young lady, and I really wish her the best of luck in Q-School. And I think on her day, she's got the game to earn her card. And so anything less than that, I would find patronising, because what you're really saying is, give her a card because she's a girl. Well, one is that sexist, but two is it's actually really patronising to a sports person, irrespective of sex, isn't it? They want to earn their way because they want to stand there on merit. And Leanne would be no different. And I think she'd be the proudest woman in the world if she earned her card or a rating on Q-School, which earned her the right to play on an open tour. Anything less than that, I think we're just cutting corners and making excuses for people.
You've said that you wouldn't want to be known as the bloke who takes the World Championship out of Sheffield, which is a great quote. What would happen if you got an enormous offer from China?
You sound like Steve Davis, that's what he said. How much? Why don't people always think I go where the money is? Me, of all people.
You said yourself before it's about the numbers.
Yeah, but there's certain things it's not. Mainly my tombstone, I quite like Spike Milligan's version. I told you I was ill, But what I don't want on mine is this is the bastard that took snooker out of the crucible. You know, I've worked too hard, I've enjoyed myself too much. I've been involved with snooker. My first event was 1974. I'm hesitating to say it's probably before you were born.
Sadly not.
Sadly not. Oh, well, you've worn well with age. But you know, when you go back that long, and you've had, I mean, I've been here since 1977. You know, you can't take away the merit. You know, it doesn't matter. You could be the hardest nosed businessman in the world. I still get a lump in my throat when I see 1981, and I still get nightmares when I see the black ball going in from Dennis Taylor. So something like that is part and parcel. Of course, most of people like me, we make money. We're promoters. We're commercial animals. But there are certain things that you really mustn't touch. And even if someone comes in with money is okay. As you get older, you know, money doesn't have that significance anymore. Mainly because I've got a lot of it, which is, you know, which is easy to make that excuse. But also, you don't. It's not the reason for getting out of bed. You know, for me, what I've enjoyed more about snooker, and it's made money, but I've enjoyed more seeing us win, because this is the game I play. I don't play this, you know, on the table. This is my game. This is my field of play. This is why I'm so intolerant of anyone who disagrees with me most of the time. I do listen, really, but you know, I know exactly where I'm going. I have the focus and the work ethic to take us there, and I won't let anything. And I'm not going to get something like, you know, an extra what, 10 million quid, take it to China. You know, sounds like a lot of money, but the damage and the lack of everything you stand for means much more than that.
But
So,
it's a point to become Olympic sport. In the Olympic family,
yeah.
there are 28 sports, but there is not a single event sport have been a world championship in a certain country or in a certain arena.
Yeah.
So do you think it's fair, it's good for the sport to be promoted in the world to become Olympic sport?
Yeah. See, as far as the Olympics are concerned, I'm a big fan of watching the Olympics. I tried to eat a medal once and it broke my tooth. The Olympics are great. I have a real big problem with the Olympics, which is why Jason Ferguson is so much better than me at dealing with the political side of the Olympics, because Jason is a tolerable, nice, professional. I look at synchronised swimming and I think, you don't want snooker in and you've got synchronised swimming? I'm losing the will to live already. So I don't value the Olympics in the same way as some people do. From a perception point of view, being Olympic sport does add commercial value, but you know, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that the World Championship should go around the world in the same way as that Wimbledon, and tennis is an Olympic sport, Wimbledon stays in Wimbledon, and it has history, and it has memories. That's so much more important, even than the Olympics.
That means that you don't care that whether this sport will become an Olympic sport or not.
My focus is making this sport commercially viable and making sure it's real. If you ask me, would I like it to be Olympic sport, I would say yes. Would you ask me, is there a price I would pay to make it Olympic sport? I would say no.
But it does not say money is not important.
Money's not important. Money's not important if you. We have so. We are.
Also, is about money. Yeah.
The commercial is about money, but the World Championships is not about either. So, you know, in life, I find as you get older, you realise you don't. Making money is really very easy. Really very easy. If you've got a good product, if you've got a good event, a good sporting event, it's so simple. So you don't have to try. What you have to try is doing the best event. And then it automatically makes money. The best event on our calendar is the Betfred World Snooker Championships. It automatically makes money because of the size of the event. But to destroy that and take it somewhere else, you run the risk of destroying so much.
Outside this country and this city,
well, they have their own events. Well, no, but that's nonsense. That's nonsense, because you can say that about Wimbledon, can't you? Should it be in Beijing? Well, so you've got the China Open, you've got the Shanghai Open, you've got the International, you've got the World Cup going to Wuxi. You know, you've got big events in China, massive events in China. You're probably 30-odd% of the world prize money coming out of China. So let's make your Chinese events really massive. Why do you want an established event on the other side of the world to move to China when you've got your own events to build? You've got to create your own history.
Wimbledon,
Sorry?
in tennis, there are 4
Majors.
There are 4 Grand Slam events,
Yeah.
like it's equal,
Yeah.
US Open, Australia Open.
But that's great, isn't it? That's great. It's how it should be. And why? And therefore, why don't we have? Why isn't the China Open the same size as the World Championships? And we'll make the European Open the same size, and maybe we'll make the Australian the same size. So we have there can be 4 Grand Slams. But one of them is the World Championships, which is staying here. It's not going anywhere. As Margaret Thatcher once said, this woman is not for moving, and I think I'll take a leaf out of her book. This is not moving, no matter what money comes in. But the good news is, the challenge is for the Chinese events is to make them bigger. Not to take someone else's big event and move it to China. Make your own events bigger. And we'll help. And I think they're doing a great job in China already, building some great events. But you know, you don't buy history. You create history. And it takes time. It's not a rush. Plenty of time. You're only young. You've got plenty of time.
Barry, just on another subject, there's a lot of tournaments these days which are played over the best of 7s, a lot, particularly recently, such as the
Yeah.
Grand Prix, India. With the introduction of these new tournaments, do you think there's scope for the return to longer formats?
Well, I mean, again, we're governed a lot by our commercial partners, turnaround time, and you know the logistics of taking so many more people to the venue than we used to. You know, if you take 8 people, you could have everything best of 25, but we don't. We take 128. So logistically is a problem. Also, I think it's really key that different events have their own personality. You know, and each event should somehow be slightly different from everything else. So, you know, you've got your best of 7s, and you've got your best of 9s in some, you've got your best of 11s in the UK, and you've got your big ones at the World Championships. You start building a structure. So, you know, the World Series events will follow the Welsh Open and be the same format right the way through that. The ranking events will follow a certain format, the World Championships will do the same. I can understand the purists wanting it, but it's a little bit yesterday. You know, the mood of today's consumer, today's general sports consumer, is looking for a little bit faster action. I mean, what we've got here is the most wonderfully British eccentric tournament the world has ever seen. When you try to explain to Americans that we have a semi-final that takes 2 and a bit days, they look at you as if you're mad. But then the curiosity kicks in, because it's a slow boil, isn't it? Snooker is a slow crescendo mover, and that's the attractiveness. It's like being in a decent long book where every chapter's telling another story. Some are paperbacks, and it's important. Some are one framers like the shootout. It's important to have different things, and again, it comes with the caveat you'll never get everything right. You know, you will lose some good players, because the standard is obviously going up, not just amongst the top 16, but amongst all the players. So the players coming into the game, as we've seen, will give those players a tough game, and obviously there'll be shocks, which is good for you to write about and for me to get decent ratings on.
So when you talk about the English, Scottish, Irish,
Yeah.
they're the home series, is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And they'll have a similar format to the Welsh?
Correct. Yeah.
Have you got venues for those?
I only just told the director, or I only just discussed with my directors this morning exactly what we're doing. So there's a little slip of the tongue there, but no, I just said, look, we're going for it. I haven't been able to sleep the last couple of nights because I'm excited by all this. So we walked in this morning and just said, boys, I think we'll go for it. And they're as mad as me. You know, you got Jason Ferguson, who's players man. You've got Brandon Parker, who's logistics man. You've got Nigel Oldfield's events man. Just dumped a pile of work on their plate, and it's like next board meeting, away you go. But by saying 2016-17, we got the chance to go to those places and make sure that we're booking the right venue, because I want to stage events that befit the quality of snooker. And I'm not having a knock at some of the venues we've used, but I think an example, moving the Welsh Open to Cardiff in the International Centre, sent out a message that this is a bit more quality, you know. I've done shows in leisure centres and hotels, hundreds and thousands of shows, so I understand everything's got, but where we are at this moment in time, we are re-educating by perception, so we need to be in the best venue in Belfast, the best venue in Cardiff. It's important.
In terms of those events, have you got plans to bring them to terrestrial television?
Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is, we're just beginning to get back into, should be looking at that, you know? So whether you're talking to the BBC, as we've said, we're talking to them about extending our agreement, maybe, who knows, adding, if they've got the appetite. certainly ITV are over the moon with their audiences from the Grand Prix, the Champion of Champions. Both of them really perform very, very well, and they may well be looking and saying, well, we should have some more. And I think you mustn't forget the BT, the new incumbents. Is it time for them to try and push their broadband services via snooker? Why not? If we hit big numbers and we can create a market. And then there are other people. Our Eurosport deal's up in a year's time, and it's done super well in Europe. I mean, super well, beyond anyone's wildest dreams. 1,100 hours of snooker telecast on Eurosport last year. #1 audience figures outside of soccer. I mean, these are big, big numbers. 12 to 15 million watching every weekend. So we are building a very strong portfolio of marketable events. And fortunately, we've got those Rottweilers at IMG driving the price up, which is obviously, he's sitting at the back, because if I didn't say something about him, he'd get the read. But we're working with good people to improve the value of our events, and that value is being translated back into increased prize money, so everybody's happy.
And just in terms of the European tour as well, there's kind of a suggestion that might have got it wrong, that you start scaling it back beyond.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're going to say to the European tour partners is, look, this is what we're doing. We've done 3, 4 or 5 years with a lot of these people, and it's done a job for us. It's kept the players busy, but realistically, from a young player's perspective, it's quite expensive to go, and if you don't make the cut, you're more and more out of pocket. So it's comes to a stage now where we're going to centralise over bigger events, where if you do make the cut, you make some proper wedge, because they need, it probably costs you 20 grand at least to play this tour. So, if you don't make the cut, and you've got your entry fees included in that, but it's quite a lot of money. So how much have you got to earn? Well, really, if you don't earn 40 to 50, you're better off getting a job. And sometimes players have to look in the mirror and say, I'm not good enough. I thought I was, but I played the tour and I'm not winning. What does that mean? It means get another job.
Are you thinking about any country in particular to host the European tour, European Open?
I think we're just going to go out to our partners and say, look, this is what we're going to do. Whether we still carry on doing some smaller events when the players make a choice if they want to play or not, or whether some of our partners rise to the challenge and say, well, we actually, where should we stage the European Open? Of course. If Poland comes, or does Latvia say, or does Lisbon say, well, we actually want to make a bid. Last week I was with the government in Gibraltar, and they're talking about making a bid for some events because they're doing a big push on getting to know Gibraltar. That's what we do. And it is, it's not just about the money, but in that particular case, the money does help.
So it's a little competition between the...
Correct. Absolutely. As there is in any sort of event, isn't there, really? It's site fees, it's bidding rights. And eventually we'll end up with, hopefully, more big European events.
Do you ever see a time like where tennis, we have more than one event at once, so the players have to choose?
I think it's coming to that now. I mean, it's happened on the dart circuit now. So a lot of players now don't play Pro Tour events because it clashes with other events. And it's a sign of success. I view it as, firstly, a sign of success, and secondly, as a great opportunity for the lesser players to get their name in the prize money list. I mean, if I was a young player and I'm going in for an event with big prize money and I see 7 or 8 of the top 16 not playing, I think, well, that's handy. They would have been quite difficult. Now I've got half a chance of making something. And I think that's why you'll see this year, on the prize money rankings, makes such a big difference. I mean, what's going to happen to McGill? We don't know what his game's going to do today, but I think he's got 35,000 for quarterfinal.
About 24.
So he's up to about 24. It's a big jump. It's a big jump. And on a 2-year ranking list, that's going to, he only needs a few more, and he's knocking on top 16. And the same with Michael White. 20, and these are the players I need. I need personality players. I need people come through where the public can warm to them. And I think those 2 kids are great ambassadors for the new breed.
Barry, to go slightly off topic here, your biggest box office star, Ronnie, has broken the rules 3 times at this tournament.
Yeah.
What's your view on that? I mean, it seems to be...
I'm surprised.
Rules,
well, I think you're looking for a good quote there. The rules are in place, and and he's been referred to disciplinary, and the disciplinary panel, which comes under, I'm glad to say, not moi, but the WPBSA, slipping out of your slipstream of question quite nicely. It's up to them what they do. My personal feeling is I know Ronnie's Ronnie, and same as and he may well break half a dozen more rules today. That's why everybody will be watching, in the same way as we used to watch Alex Higgins waiting to self-destruct. It's a bizarre part of sports television, isn't it? But from a bureaucratic control point of view, there is a disciplinary panel, there are rules in the Players Association book, which if he's broken, he, I'm sure, will be punished.
How do you develop to followers of sport in general and perhaps even at the sponsors you're trying to attract, you would expect more transparency?
The reaction from most people is, or from a sponsorship level, is if it gets more eyeballs watching, almost anything is acceptable, which is not necessarily right, but that's a commercial attitude. From the general public, it's generally reacted by humour, where they think that anyone who complains about it is actually taking themselves far too seriously. Whereas we on the purist side of the game would say, no, you've got to wear shoes. It says in the rule book. But to the average Joe public that's watching, they don't say, oh, that's a terrible, you'll have a few anoraks, but the average player is like, well, it's Ronnie, isn't it? I mean, lucky he's playing with his trousers on, I mean, it's like, anything, because he's Ronnie. And in a way, as much as you can take the moral high ground, of course, but actually there's a big part of me saying, I wish I had 12 more of them and I'd have the problems. And also the good news is that all the fines go to Bluebell Wood Children's Hospice. And the way Ronnie's going, I think we're going to name a ward after him.
No, if it just touching on that, I know he says it every year that he's going to go and he's going to pack it in. If and when that happens, what does that do to your sport?
Nothing at all.
Nothing?
Nothing whatsoever. We build all this, and what happens if? And it's happened in so many other sports in the past. Oh, we can't. Sampras, what a great tennis player. When he packs up, people move on. People rise to the occasion. People take over. The king is dead, long live the king. There'll be purists, but there are two audiences here, aren't there? They're the purists, the real traditional snooker players that follow everything and wonderful. I mean, unbelievable dedication to their sport. But there are 0.01% of the audience. And providing the event is attractive and it's shown well on TV and it's full up crowds and it's good standard, it moves on. And that's what happens.
To go to the places that you want to go with the sport, you need to lead you along.
Well, yeah, I haven't got that with Ronnie anyway, because he don't go, does he? So I've got used to that over the years. But I've got some great ambassadors out there that I know I can rely on. Now, it's not for me to say are they as damagingly exciting as Mr. O'Sullivan, but when you've got the likes of Selby and Murphy and Robertson and Ding and all those, these are great players and great ambassadors. And actually, don't overestimate these overseas venues. They've heard of. I mean, I've got it on darts at the moment. Phil Taylor. How long before he goes? Everyone said, "Oh, it'll be a disaster when Phil goes." You know what? He'll just slide away, and he'll be replaced as he has by Michael Van Gerwen or someone else. And that sport does that. It throws up new champions to support. And I think Ronnie will be the same. But I have a feeling with Ronnie that he'll be around a lot longer than we all think, because Ronnie will always do what we least expect. He has retired more times than Frank Sinatra, and but I think I think when Ronnie reads this, he'll go $500,000 for the winner. I've got to wait 2 years. I'm having some of that. I mean, that'll pay the school fees. No danger, And he'll be off and running again. And that's why we love him, because he's so unpredictable. And you need unpredictability. We need things to talk about, don't we? Otherwise, it'd just be me drivelling on about numbers, and that would be so boring. Anything else, guys? All finished? Thank you so much for everything. Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just like to ask you about this home series.